Hey VC, this is Luke with Hot Wax and Cool Vinyl. Welcome back. Unless this is the first time you're viewing my channel, then simply welcome. Hopefully you are having a fine day, wherever or whenever you happen to be watching this video. As far as when it was made on March 2nd, 2022. Not that that's of any particular import. I just like to open up my videos by saying what day it is. Call it a habit. Recently I've had a bit of a job change, so things have been a little hectic. I haven't done as many videos as I normally do. However, the ones I have done, even dating back to last year, have been predominantly recent finds video. I've been buying a lot of records, and so I enjoy sharing them with the vinyl community and getting the interplay and so forth and so on with the other members. However, it does tend to get a little monotonous. You know, there's only so many times, you know, you can draw interest by, hey, look what I just picked up. You know, that sort of thing. So I wanted to change it up. I just had no idea what I wanted to do or what I didn't want to do. I knew I didn't want to do another vinyl finds or another like top 100 or anything like, you know, things you must have in your collection. I've done those, and so has everyone else. And they're okay. They're always interesting, but they've been done to death. So I'm going to do something else that's probably been done, and hopefully not to death, but probably been done. And that is I want to do a series, and a series of, for lack of a better term, let's call them generational albums. And albums, not 45s. You know, albums that changed the course of music, if you will. Not to be so dramatic about it, but, you know, I'll give you an example of. Unfortunately, it's not an album, but it should be included as like Elvis. You know, when Elvis burst out on the scene, there was a lot of singles. And sure, Elvis changed everything. I mean, you know, he was doing things on stage that no one else was doing. I mean, we were going from crooners, Bing Crosby, Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, of course. And all of a sudden, here's Elvis, and he's doing a lot of R&B stuff, and it's just he's dancing, he's gyrating. So that was a change, and that was generational. So that's kind of where I'm going with it. But I want to focus on albums because they're easier than singles, and you can dive into a little deeper with the albums. So I want to do one album per series, and I'll keep doing it as long as there's interest in it. You know, if nobody likes it and they don't want it, we'll move on to something else. But I really want to hear back from you guys. What do you think about the albums? Add some input to them. You know, if you don't think they're worthy of being considered, let's say, a generational album or a music-altering album, as it were. Let's put it that way. It's a little bit better than generational. Because it's tough to have 10 albums in a period of 3 years being generational. You know, it can't be all once in a generation when there's 5 of them, you know. So, without further ado, let's start. The first album I chose was Meet the Beatles. This, of course, is not their first album, but it is an album that I consider to be a generational album. This, of course, was released in January of 1964. This was released on Capitol. It's not their first album. In case you don't know, just a quick backtrack. Vee-Jay Records had introducing the Beatles before Capitol released this. Vee-Jay and Capitol got into litigation over the Beatles. Vee-Jay was a small record company out of Chicago. Capitol, of course, was out of New York. Capitol Records had substantially more capital and more wherewithal, so they simply started litigation, and Vee-Jay couldn't keep up, so they signed the rights over to Capitol, and Capitol released Meet the Beatles. So Meet the Beatles comes out on in January of '64. January 20th or 24th? No, January 20th or so. And it basically comes in at 92 on the charts by February 1st. It was 92 on the record charts. 2 weeks later, it's number one. It stays number one for 11 weeks, only to be replaced as number one album by the Beatles' second album. And I'm not going to get into the story of the Beatles and Ed Sullivan and stuff. Just suffice it to say, this album sold 4 million copies by the end of '64. It was already a gold album by, I think, by February 3rd. It had already reached gold album status. This is before the album even hit number one. So in 2 weeks, this thing hit gold album status. 4 million copies its first year. 4,600,000 copies by the end of the century. Almost 5 million copies. 1991, this thing hits 5 times platinum as far as an album is concerned. So, you know, we can nitpick about the music. It was very pop at the time. I mean, but the album itself transformed so much, leaving aside the fact that it was on the charts for as long as it was and has done as well as it's done throughout its history. I mean, this thing, you can still buying it on eBay, left, right, and center. I mean, to this day, it's still selling. So this album comes out and is a precursor, obviously, to the British invasion, or started the British invasion. I mean, I don't know if that's officially what you want to call it, but this is it. You know, they came in '64, did the Ed Sullivan Show, did everything, and it was, you know, very, very different across the board, from not only their haircuts to the music they were sounding. They were much more of an R&B, let's say, I think Rolling Stone, basically, when they did the reviews, and it's still, by the way, on Rolling Stone's must-have albums. I think it's ranked 92nd on Rolling Stone's must-have albums. But I think there was the way they described it was a much more R&B sound to the rock and roll that was being played at the time. British R&B, so it was a little bit different, but still very, very, you know, what we consider very poppy now was really not what was being played on the radio at the time. If you think about what it was up against, you know, Fabian and pardon me, Chuck Berry, you know, it was very different sounding. So this lent itself to being an album that basically changed the United States and opened up the United States to British music. Subsequently, the Rolling Stones and everybody else came following that because, you know, yeah, but the Beatles were the first ones and this was the album. So, I mean, 5 times platinum. And this was in '91. So it's probably gone 6 times platinum by now. I don't know. I haven't gotten, and you know, I was just stunned when I read that. Tell me, what do you think? I think it's a generational album. I think it's one of those albums that changed the course of music. I think it's an interesting way to open up this series. So, do you like the concept of this series? I'm sure I know in the VC we got a bunch of Beatles guys and girls who really, really know much more than I do on the Beatles. I like the Beatles, but I'm not an aficionado of the Beatles, right? You know, I know what McCartney had for breakfast last Thursday, for example, you know? But if I omitted something or got one of the stats wrong, just please correct me, feel free. So this is the part where I say, hey guys, if you like my channel, you know, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you like, leave me a comment. That to me is like one of the most important things. That's the fun I enjoy with making these videos, is because the interaction with other vinyl community members, other record collectors, and inevitably, as I mentioned in one of my last videos, it's almost always the case that I learned something from the comments that I didn't know going into it. So yeah, please feel free to leave a comment. Actually, I encourage it. Just not horrible comments, because that's uncool. Kidding. Nonetheless, have a great day. Enjoy your rest of the week, or the day, whatever, or whenever you happen to be watching this. Hopefully you're having a great time and a great day. Cheers.